Good morning and welcome to another Notes of Interest. I am D. Anthony Charles. Notes of Interest is a production of the National Farmers and General Workers Cooperative Credit Union. Remember to please like our Facebook page and subscribe to us on YouTube. Today we end our four-part series on the job preparation workshop where we basically looked at the four processes, well, the four simple processes or key processes in trying to find employment. We talked about looking for a job online. We talked about creating your resume. We spoke about going through the job interview. We had Mrs. Kimberly Xavier Wells, Mr. Brian John, and now today we end the four-part series with a storm of a person, Miss Marjorie Wharton from the University of the West Indies. She is one of the directors down there, and she's really going to end the four-part series. It is a pleasure to have her on here. We know UE is very busy. They're doing a lot of webinars and online courses. So it's always a pleasure to have somebody from the University of the West Indies down there. And maybe we'll talk about some of the upcoming courses that they have as well. So good morning, Miss Marjorie Wharton. Welcome to Notes of Interest. Thank you so much for your time.
And good morning to you, sir. And a pleasure to be here this morning. I was very happy to have been invited to be a part of this series, especially one that's focusing on helping people to succeed in their careers.
Right, yes. But you know what's interesting is that we've been talking about coming out of COVID-19 and what interviews would look like and what jobs would look like, noting that people are trying to find new employment, skeptical or unsure of how their present employment situation will be, and also how the community is going to look like in terms of interviews and in terms of moving forward, because a lot of people have become unemployed. They may look at going into self-employment, and there's also the real issue of how do I get employment now with such a limited employment opportunities due to COVID-19, or are more jobs going to be open and everything like that? So we're just going to speak to people and see how we could get them through.
Yeah.
And then let's look at what we did in the past and your thoughts on it. So we were talking with Mrs. Xavier Wells, and she took us basically through preparing a resume. And one of her points was that you need to keep it concise, keep it short. She told us some of the things but I'm asking you now, what are some of the things that you think should definitely be on a resume in terms of a regional and international perspective?
Well, I would definitely agree with what was included in terms of the suggestion of keeping it as precise as you can be. There is a lot of debate out there on whether or not resumes should be long or short. But in the end, what is most important is that you definitely put the key information up top, so to the front, in any kind of summary that you can. Because, and I've been in a position to be recruiting people for years, and the honest truth is that while you may put a lot of effort into your 10, 12, or 13-page resume, in many instances, we're not in a position to read all of those 10, 12, 13 pages. And so what usually happens is you head to the key things. So you head straight to looking at the experience. So what has this person done? What qualifications do they have? And a lot of people are looking for those things to make a determination on whether or not you even get in the door for an interview. And one of the key things that you're looking at when you're looking at experience, you're looking to see what the person's actually done. So what skills, what expertise they may possess. So you don't ever just want to write your job title, but you want to say what it is you've actually done.
Now, I'm happy that you talked about experience, because with Mr. John, when we talked about the interview now, I said to him, listen, you have somebody coming in with years of experience and you have somebody coming in with no experience. And the continued cry is, you want somebody with experience? I have no experience. How do you expect me to get experience if you're not willing to hire me and give me an opportunity? What say you?
Okay, now first I'll say that's a two-part question. So the first part of
Yes.
that question is usually when you are looking at someone and you're considering someone with experience and someone who does not have experience, it really depends on the job that you're looking at. Because there are
Mhm.
times that you look at a resume, someone has experience and you say they're not right for the job because they are too experienced for the role, and you may be more willing to take someone who has no experience and train them up for the position. So it really depends on the job. But when it then comes to the situation where you say you have no experience, there are very few people who have absolutely no experience. You may not have been employed before, but you have some experience. So if you've done volunteer work, you've been doing things at your church, you're a part of your church choir, and you've been singing and you've been performing, you organize the church party, you organize this, you organize that. You have skills and you have competencies that you perhaps don't even think about. And you want to be able to consider those as competencies and be able to identify them and write them on your resume. There's also always the advice to be willing to take volunteer work, especially if you've never been employed. Let's say you're just out of school because you're thinking of how hard it is for people who may have lost their job to find work. But just think of the person who's just come out of high school and maybe can't go to university and is looking for a job. I mean, they're considered really at the bottom of the rung because they don't have experience and they're young, and people are likely to take someone who's slightly older. So if you find yourself in that position, you want to be willing to volunteer. Say to someone, I want to volunteer and be a part of maybe organizing a project or a program that's going on, or you want to go to an organization and you want to serve as an intern. Internships are the best things when you can put on your resume that you've done it, you've worked in an environment. You don't have to tell people you're a team player, then they can see that you're a team player because they know you've worked that. You don't have to tell them you have the ability to organize and coordinate because they can see it based on what you're saying you've done. So my suggestion is if you find yourself in a situation with absolutely no experience, to try those, absolutely no employment experience, to try those options in order to get something that you can put onto your resume.
So you do have experience. It is just that it may not be work experience or employment experience, but you have volunteered and you need to take that and add that to your resume. Now, earlier on, you touched on something saying that when people come into the interview or into they're thinking that they have no experience. Let's talk about that. Why would somebody think that volunteering is not a thing for them or not gaining some kind of experience? Where, because now that you've put that out there, I'm thinking a
Yeah.
lot of people are going, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
So why would they, what would hold them back, or why would they not think of that as some kind of experience?
I think
And
that's
you talked about even the church.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's mindset. That's how we look at it. A lot of people don't see themselves clearly. And so a lot of people undervalue the knowledge that they have, the skills they have, and the competencies. And they're not always recognizing how capable they may be. Yes, there are a lot of people out there. We always know the person who's, as we say, full of themselves and arrogant and conceited. But there are a lot more people out there who do not value the experience that they have. And so the individual who perhaps, and I'll use myself as an example, when I was at secondary school, I remember working with our music teacher and coordinating things for
Mhm.
dealing with concerts and so on. And so that is an experience that you learn because you learn how to deal with people, you learn how to make contacts, how to plan, and how to organize. And so, if you have someone who's in high school and who's been doing those things, you've been gaining experiences and skills that you're not even thinking right now are valuable. But here's the thing, what tends to happen is you realize when you get into a role in an organization that you're hired for, and you have to tap into the experience that you have, you begin to realize, hey, wait a minute, I've done this before. So I have some idea of how to start. And you're tapping into those things that you've done before, not just the things that you've learned or the theory or the concepts. I always say to people that a lot of what we study, so if you go to university, you study your degree for 3 years or 4 years, even if you've gone all the way up to do master's level, the value of that knowledge is that it gives you a fantastic foundation because you then have that knowledge in your head. But a lot of the things that you learn and you start to do and you start to put into practices, the competencies and skills you build from actually doing things. So you always have to recognize that as you are doing an activity, you are building a skill and a competency.
As you're building and doing activities, you're gaining a skill and a competency. I love that. So,
Absolutely. And one of the things I would say as well, and this is something that we talk about, because you don't value those things, you sometimes aren't even making note of them. So you're maybe not even writing them down. So sometimes you don't even remember that you've done this thing and you know how to do this. So it's important, especially when you're trying to put together your resume, to remember all those things and write them down. I remember one time I had on my resume when I first started working that I worked in the processing of current accounts at Barclays Bank. So that'll tell you how long ago it was, right? There was still a Barclays.
right,
And my job really was that I used to have to stamp checks. I mean, that was the full extent of my summer internship. It was stamping checks for months.
right,
You know that
yes,
that little stamp and the little pad with the ink. You
yes.
stamp that and you stamp it back. But you know, when I put it on the resume, it looked different. So sometimes you just have to show people that you have been an employee, you have served in a role, and you've worked for, you have had the discipline to do a task. And that's what we're looking for when we're considering a person based on the resume.
So it's just basically taking note of everything you've done through your life, as minute as you think it is in a volunteering role, and adding that to your resume to build your resume. So
Absolutely.
right. So in two parts, we've actually dealt with the resume and we've dealt with going into the interview again. Now, I want to ask, you've been successful for the interview. Mr. John mentioned that in the interview, do not be overly confident. Don't say things that you know you can't do. And when you get in there, it's proven that, hey, you're not the person. So, getting through the interview, what are some of the points that you want to help our viewers to they understand about making it successfully through the interview, having a successful interview, getting that job?
Okay. And again, those are two different things because you
Yes,
can
two
have a
questions again.
yeah, you can have a
Yes,
successful interview and still don't get the
and
job.
not get the job. Yes.
So, so if you are thinking about what it takes to have a successful interview, first, of course, and I'm sure Mr. John would have mentioned this, you prepare for your interview. And it's never easy because as much as you prepare, you can still have a question that comes up that will throw you. And it's okay for you to not look perfect as you're going there. You just want to make sure people understand you prepared and you care enough about the position to take the time to do some research and so on. And as you're preparing for your interview, you generally want to understand the organization, what their goals are, what they're looking for in the role. And you also have to be prepared to consider that maybe the organization is not right for you. Now, I know that's difficult to say and it's difficult to hear, especially in challenging economic times. But the truth is, sometimes you know that this really isn't where you want to be, and you are taking the job because it is necessary. You really need to eat. You know, you've gotten into that habit of eating every day. You know, most of us have that. So
Right.
because that's our reality, sometimes we find that we take positions or we take roles that we don't feel comfortable in and we really don't aren't going to love doing. And sometimes then you get into the job and your performance does not match the enthusiasm you had in the interview because your interest in the interview was on convincing the
Mhm.
employer to employ you. So when you are going
Right.
into your interview, you want to be aware of what you really want in a job. And as much as your circumstances allow you to be in that position, you have to be interviewing the
Right.
interviewer. And if they are not right for you, you have to be prepared to walk away from that. And yes, I know that's
So,
easier said than done.
so you answering two questions, but you just mentioned something there that caught me.
Mm.
Understand that you may not, the job may not be for you. Um, in this very limited
Yeah.
economy, people really just want to make money. And sometimes they will take anything according to them. And I always say, people, you're not going to take anything because how many of you will actually go and apply to be a janitor or a toilet cleaner or a laboratory cleaner. So
Mhm.
my situation and question for you here is, how do you internalize? And I know you want to end what you were starting with. So that's a third question on there. How do you internalize or know what's for you? What do you want to do?
Passion, what gets you excited, what you're
Do you think
interested.
people know that? They know their passion and what gets them excited? Do you think people understand that?
Sometimes. And I think that
Hmm.
only comes when you internalize it and you think it through, you actually realize that's something you should be doing and you start doing it. That's when you're
Hmm.
able to get there. But you're right that for a lot of us, a lot more of us are concerned about, well, I need a job. I have my family to feed. I
Hmm.
need to build experience so I can do this for 5 years and then move on and do something I'm really interested in. Or you may want to build up money just so you can get enough connections and resources to start your own business. But the important point is that I'll say to anyone who finds themselves in that position and that's what you're doing, then be honest with yourself, that's what you're doing. You're not doing it because you love the job. You're not doing it because you love the work, but you are doing it because you have a bigger goal. And that's okay. But be truthful, honorable, be authentic in the role that you're in. So if you're taking a job because you just need the job and you just need to be able to get the money in order to do something else or something you find more interesting, then while you are in that job, give it your 100%. Don't go in there and kind of phone it in, I think is the expression, where you're
Hmm.
not giving your all, you're not performing at a high level, and then you're upset if anybody calls you on it. You have to be prepared. If you're going to take the job that you don't love, you still have to be prepared to treat it like it's a job that you love. Give it your all. You will be amazed at the skills and competencies that you will learn in a job, even if it's something that you hate.
You
But you have
don't
to be
like,
open to it, yes. You
and
have
you
to
may
be.
grow to like it.
You may grow to like it or you may not, but you may find there's certain aspects of it you like. So, for example, there are a lot of people who don't like admin work. So, you may take a job working in an office as a secretary or an assistant. You don't necessarily like the admin work, but maybe you realize that as part of what you're responsible for, you're there to coordinate activities as well. And maybe you like that. Maybe you like the planning part. So you may develop that as a competency and a skill. You may then move on to do a course on event planning, or you may start your event planning business on the side, or you may go on to do your degree in project management, something like that. So you want to be open to the experience and be authentic while you're going through it. So don't sit there and be upset that, this is not the job I really want. I hate being here every day, and then grumble and complain, because what that does, it does give your employer a poor impression of you, but it also robs you of the opportunity to learn something valuable.
So just open yourself to the experience, learn what you can. Because the funny thing is, the job that you want to do, maybe what you're doing just might catapult you into it and
Yeah.
give you kind of the experience because you noted before. Take note of everything you do to add to your resume, but it's also building you.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll also say this, and this is a quotation that I heard once and I've adopted and I tell people whenever I'm teaching and training. The
Hmm.
problem with opportunity is that it often comes disguised as hard work. And so you may be in your organization and somebody asks you to do something, and it seems to you like it is the hardest thing. It is so complicated. They're not paying you extra money for it. You have to put extra hours into it. All that is doing is taking up your free time when you could be home binge watching Netflix or out with your friends or doing sports or something else. But you may find later on that that either introduces you to someone or introduces you to something that benefits you in the long run in a way that you never expected. I will say that I've been fortunate throughout my career. I've had opportunities that the only thing they come disguised as is hard work. And
The
somebody's asking you
problem
to
with mhm.
the
Go
problem
ahead,
with
go ahead.
opportunity
Opportunity
is
it
that
comes
it most
disguised as
often
hard
comes
work.
hard.
All right.
And so when you see the hard work and you shy away from it, you lose the opportunity that comes down the road. So as a result of me saying yes to somebody saying, did you want to work on this particular project? And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it because it looked simple. And then for probably a year, all I could see was the hard work. But as a result of that, I then wound up getting opportunities to work with universities all around the world, travel to different places in the world to talk about what we were doing because it was part of a research project. And I have something that I can now put on my resume that talks about skills that I've developed in the area of research or connections that I've made. I can say to someone, but if you're going to do this, this is how you do it. If you need to talk to somebody at that university, call this person. So you don't know where it will take you. So even though it's unpleasant now, it could lead to a great opportunity for you down the road.
So now we get into your why we invited you here. Marketing
Yeah.
yourself online and marketing yourself continuously through work.
Yes.
How does someone use, because we recognize that people are now going onto Facebook and your Instagram and checking you out. We recognize that a lot of interviews are being done online, and COVID has made this even more amplified. So how do you market yourself online? uh, and I know there's LinkedIn and a lot of other work sites, work social media that, or professional social media that you can use. But how do you market yourself online, and how do you market yourself through work to ensure that your end goal of experience is gained, and that you are successful in your day-to-day activity?
Okay. In both instances, anytime you're going to be marketing yourself, you want to start first with having a clear understanding of what you want people to know about you and what you want people to be able to say about you. So, whether it is that you are marketing yourself in your organization, where you're making sure that the other people in the organization know who you are, or if it is that you want to make sure you are on the company intranet by the articles that you post or the information that you share, or you want to make sure that you go to all the networking events in the company. So when there's a Christmas party, back when we used to get together and do such things. So if there's a Christmas party and so on, you go there and you meet and you interact with the people who are the key people in the organization. All of that comes because somewhere in your mind, you have to have made a decision about what you want to accomplish from doing this. So it always starts with an end goal in mind. End goal in mind. Is it that you want people to know that you are a capable, competent individual who's open to taking opportunities in the organization? If so, then how are you going to, who in the organization do you need to meet? Who in the organization needs to know what you're capable of doing? What are the projects in the organization that you need to get assigned to or you need to work with? If you want to be known as someone who is a font of information or knowledge, then do you have the opportunity to perhaps, as you find articles online or you find little videos online that really are exciting and interesting, are there people in the organization you can share that with? So that when they are thinking of new information, they're thinking, who can help me find this? Then you're the person that they know to go to. Now, when it comes to online, it translates the same, some of the same concepts, but you're taking it into an online forum. One of the things that you want to consider is what is your primary social media platform that you're going to be working with? And I heard you mention LinkedIn. And LinkedIn
Mhm.
is really seen as the platform for business people. So you want to, if you are out there trying to find work, you want to make sure your profile is on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
It's nice if you are on Facebook as well. It's nice if you have an Instagram account and you can reach out to people on those places. But usually, if people are looking for anyone when it's related to business, they are going to be reaching out and looking for you on LinkedIn. Now, having said that, you want to make sure that you're using it effectively. So, one of the things, and I identify this once on LinkedIn as one of my pet peeves when it comes to people on there, please make sure you have a photo. If you are selling yourself online and you want people to see who you are, make sure that there's a photo because there are a lot of people who are very suspicious of any accounts that do not have photos.
Mhm.
In addition, make sure that as you're completing your profile, you are treating it like if it's your resume. So I know a lot of people are thinking perhaps they don't want to put too much of their information out there. They don't want people to know too much about them. But then again, remember, it depends on what you are using the platform for. If you want a potential employer to see you and consider you as a candidate for a job, then you want to be able to put enough information there that when they look at it, they can take you seriously and know that people are making decisions very quickly in these things because they often have limited time to make a decision and they have a lot of candidates as potential for the role or the job. So if you look at your profile, whether it's on LinkedIn or it's on Facebook or even on Instagram, you want to make sure you have information in there that will help people to decide that you are the right candidate for the job or you're someone that they can consider as a candidate for the job.
So, two things. You talked about photos.
Yes.
You talked about linking. Is it
Yes.
fair that Facebook, because this is, I know this is going to bring up a lot of comments, but Facebook is kind of a personal, my my activities, my fun, my weekend, my lighter social media platform, not as professional as a LinkedIn.
Yes.
But and managers and HR managers go to people's Facebook page and look at it to get
Yes.
an idea of what kind of person they're hiring. The
Yes.
photos on Facebook, because Facebook has a lot of photos, could be a little bit spicy. Is
Mm-hmm.
it fair that somebody is judged by the photos in their Facebook unprofessional account um, as they seek employment or things that they've posted? Because when you go to someone's Facebook account and they've posted their own personal thoughts of the day or of 11 years ago or 5 years ago or even 3 months ago, which could be seriously changed today, does that or should that affect somebody's employability, their photos and what they write?
Well, let me put it to you this way. It's not a matter of whether or not it should, but it's a matter of the fact that it does. So we can, as much as we want, dispute or discuss whether it's fair or not, but it's important to know that it does. And so even though you may say to yourself, well, this is my personal account and no employer should be checking on here, the important point to know is that they could be. So as much as possible, my suggestion to anyone out there is to realize anything you put online is online forever.
Mm.
Be aware that you may be thinking this is your personal platform, but so long as it can be accessed by anyone, that anyone can get access to it. Now, of course, there are certain limitations, and you may be able to restrict your photos from going to the public and keep them in private and maybe share only with friends and connections. You can choose to do that. And then you can choose to be as discreet as you want to be in terms of who you then access or give access to your account. And that's fine. But please understand that you could have it limited, but then someone in your account could take that photo and tag it somewhere else. And so it then gets to someone else in that way. So nothing you put online anymore is private, not fully. It's not completely
So,
private. And while it's
right. So,
not clear, it's the same thing as if something that you had a photo or somebody took a photo of you and published it in the press. It's the same. That's kind of
it's
how
the
that's
same
like.
thing. Because it is truly the new media. And I like how you put it. It's like somebody took a photo of you and put it in the press. It is the new media. And I think a lot of people forget that what it is word of mouth as word of finger. Everybody now, millions of people have access to everything that you say and write. And the key point that you brought up here is to limit and private the people that private what you post and then limit the people that have access to it so that you're not putting things out there that you don't want the general public to know. So you can still have your posts, you can still put up your photos, but just know that hey, somebody else may be watching and that may affect you in the future. So limit who has access to everything.
Yeah.
Dawn Rising Star French, one of the viewers, noted that it's kind of hard to keep up to date with the challenges of your CV, keeping your CV up to date because so much goes on in your life. So I guess that comes from the point of noting everything you do to actually add to your CV. But a CV and a resume are quite different. So
Well,
I don't know if you want to touch on, yeah.
let me tell you this. It may be difficult to keep up, but it's important that you do. because there may be things that you've done that you've even forgotten that you've done. And so sometimes if you don't write it down, you don't have it written somewhere, you won't remember. So while I'm willing to agree with Dawn that it can be difficult because there's so many things that you're doing, if part of your strategy is to, as they say, and this is a recommendation that's made all the time, you want to keep your CV and your resume up to date, then you want to be consistently always making note of what you've done. You don't have to wait to get your CV up to date when you need it. You want to keep it up to date all the time.
The time. You mentioned in moving forward in your employment and advancing, knowing the right people to connect with in your employment and creating the correct impression with them. You said that earlier.
Hmm.
Uh, can that be assumed as being aggressive? And do people not like aggressive people in the workplace? Or is it, hey, I see you as somebody with potential and I like? Hey, he's too aggressive. He's always, what is he trying to do? Or, and sorry, three part question. I'm so sorry to do this in an interview. Is he coming for my job? Does he want my job? Is he trying to, get my job kind of situation?
Now, the sad truth in life is you may have all of those impressions in somebody's mind and you can do nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it does not mean that your alternative to that is to do nothing. Because the same people who may see you as aggressive will also say that you're too laid back if you don't at least try and do something and reach out. So it's almost like you can't win either way. But the thing I'll say to you is this: it's not so much what you do, as how you do it. So you're not necessarily going to walk up to someone, let's say in a face-to-face event, walk up, stick your hand out and go, "Hi, I am," and introduce yourself. And so, I'm really hoping that you could help me. You don't do it that way. You go up, you introduce yourself to the person, and perhaps you walk away with no expectation other than having met them, having shaken their hand, having told them you're impressed by them, or say where you work in the organization, and move on with no other expectation. Because it's important at least that you know who those people are, and as much as you can, you at least let them know who you are. Because when your name comes up in a discussion and you're not in the room, somebody needs to be able to say who you are. And
McNeil,
go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, and where this is perhaps even more important is online. Because online, it's not so much seen as being aggressive as it's seen as simply building your network. So when it comes to Facebook or it comes to LinkedIn or Instagram, and you know that there are people in your industry, you want to be able to make them a part of your network. So reach out and connect to them online, because then you want to know what information they're sharing. You perhaps want to know who they're connected to that you also need to keep your eye on. And that is more about building your network in a social media context than being seen as being aggressive.
Right. McNeil, one of the first presenters in this series, noted that he was in his company, I think, working, and one of the directors came up and says, "You McNeil, your name goes ahead of you." Um, and I guess he had not met him before, but because they were talking about him, so not even necessarily somebody in the room to talk about you, but that you're creating impact in the company so much that even if nobody there knows you, your name has already been synonymous. How do you create that impressionable person, that person that everybody knows the name, that even if you're not in the room, who you are speaks for you? How can you do that?
By your work performance. When it comes to an organization where you are trying to get people to know who you are, it ties into your willingness to be a part of projects. To how are you able to build your visibility in the organization? What work are you doing that people can see that you're doing it? What projects are you a part of? So sometimes, again, this is where it goes back to maybe volunteering to be a part of something that it may be outside of your job. But I'm willing to bet for every organization, if you have a sports committee, everybody knows who's on the sports committee, or they know who's organizing it. If there's somebody who organizes the Christmas party, everybody knows who that is. Even if they roll their eyes every time they come to ask them to volunteer to do something, they know who that person is. So you want to be a part of projects, activities where you are able to meet people, and it may require you to go beyond what your substantive job description says, but at least it gets you out there. People know who you are, people know what you're capable of. Now, in addition, there's also the opportunity where the high profile project may come up at work. And so somebody puts their hand up and say, okay, I'll work on it. And somebody else says, not me. I have other things to do. I'm not getting involved in that nonsense. But the person who is a part of the high profile project, who may be taking on more responsibility and more work, who they are working with then knows what they're capable of. And so they can talk to somebody else. Well, I worked with this guy on this project and he did that. Or I worked with this girl and she was able to do that. Also, be willing to be a person who can share information with others. We still have in the Caribbean sometimes, we have instances where individuals are not willing to share the information that they have because information they see as power. And so seeing it as power, they think holding on to the information is the power. But you can have greater power if you're the one who finds information and shares it with everybody else. Because then when people want something and they want to know something, who are you going to call? They're going to call the person that they know it always seems to be in the know. So those kinds of things, I think, which can raise your profile. And it really is about personal branding when you think about it. What do you want to be known as or known for in your organization? Once you're able to make that clear decision and then act on it consistently, and be persistent. So don't just decide that you do it one time and nobody immediately responded and you say, well, it didn't work. But you have to do it consistently and it takes time to build that. But that's how you build your reputation in the organization. And maybe I would say to you now, if you're wondering now, maybe ask a few people, ask some close friends at work. If you had to describe me to somebody else, what would you say? Or what do you think my key skills are? Those kinds of things, because that helps you to get a sense of maybe what they would say about you now if they had to describe you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Marjorie Wharton from the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, Surgical School of Business and Management, Inc. And in a nutshell, keep your resumes very concise and short. Don't come with the 13 pages. Make sure that you emphasize on your experience. Be somebody who volunteers before you get the job so you can add these volunteer situations to your resume. Then coming from there, also be someone who volunteers at work. Even if you're not sure how this is done or it's not something that you're comfortable with, let somebody lead the project and you also volunteer. Hey, I'd like to try and assist in any way I can, so you get additional experience from the work. My goodness, what a wealth of information coming from you. Go into the interview and say exactly what you want. Be powerful and in your presentation. When you come into work, ensure that people know your name and that you have a a very work oriented work, that you have great work ethics. That's one of the things that you mentioned. And you're also saying for your marketing of yourself on social media, ensure that you have a photo, ensure that everything that you post is something that you want everybody to see, because you don't want to put things on there that's going to hamper you in the future. Miss Wharton, any last words, any final comments that you want to leave our viewers with as we
Absolutely.
end the career preparation workshop, part 4?
Absolutely. I would say this. Please know that it is possible. Whatever it is you want to do in your career, it is possible. It may seem challenging, it seems like it requires a lot of work, but for most people, you're used to hard work. So that's nothing now. And whatever you dream for yourself, it's possible. And in the Caribbean, especially now with all the challenges we're having in terms of the economy and so on, we need people who have brilliant ideas to go out there and try to be innovative, try to be creative, market yourself. Don't worry about the little hard work. And I want you to believe that it is possible for you to achieve what you want to achieve in your life.
Thank you so much. We really want to thank Miss Eversley and the entire team at the University of the West Indies. From the time we started this relationship with the National Farmers, every time we call on you guys, you've been there, and the information has been wealthy. It has been strong, and definitely something that everybody needs to hear. Now, that tells me that students thinking of where they need to go to school, the University of the West Indies is the place, because
Absolutely.
the technocrats in there, very skilled, and I understand why it is a strong institution. I went to the University of the West Indies myself. So guys, if you're thinking of where to go to school, the University of the West Indies is the place. And if you're worried about in classroom situations due to all of our little experiences over the last 6 months, they're online. Okay,
Yep.
and Miss Eversley, Miss Watson, Miss Innens are
Yes.
very ready to take your information and get you registered for school. So thank you, and thank you for always coming on when we ask you to, and all of the information that you guys have brought to us. This has been Notes of Interest. I am Anthony Charles. Remember to like and subscribe. Subscribe on Facebook, like our Facebook page, like this series. We're going to be back in a few minutes. We'll be talking to the Ministry of Agriculture on the 17th of June last week. We recognized the World Day of Degradation and Desertification, and there were a number of activities held over the weekend and last week. So they're going to come and speak to us for just 10 minutes. So we will be back. You can tune into that. We're really, again, grateful to UE for coming on. Like, subscribe, and see you next week, Monday, 9:30, same place, same time. Thank you, Miss
Very welcome. My
Watson. It
pleasure.
was a
Take care.
pleasure, and have an amazing time. Yeah.
All right. You too. Bye.
Thank you.